Alright, so now we're going to look at how to add artifact support to your ASP.NET MVC5 application. So here I'm using MVC5, and before we actually jump into the actual code, I want to show you the NuGet packages which I'm using. So let's go into Manage NuGet Packages, and predictably enough, I'm using Artifact. You can pretty much guess that, but in addition I'm also using Artifact MVC5, as you can see here. So that means that in addition to the core artifact, you also need to add the artifact package for whatever framework you're using. So for example, if you're using MVC4, then you would need artifact.mvc4. So now that we've got this installed, we can go into application_start in our global.asax.cs file and actually customize our application by adding dependency injection support. So the first thing you would do is you would make a container builder. We've done it a dozen times before so far. Builder equals new container builder, like so. And then at some point we're going to actually build the container and pass it on to MVC. But before we do, let's discuss some of the things that you could customize. So first of all, you would want to register the controllers. So the way this is done is either by using assembly scanning or by registering each of the controllers manually. So if you want assembly scanning, you would just go and you would say builder.register controllers, like so, and here you would provide the name of the assembly. So in this case, I would just go for get type assembly. That would give you a registration for every single controller in this particular assembly. Now note that controllers are registered as concrete types. You cannot register as a controller as some sort of home controller interface. So if you want to register them individually, that's also possible. You would go and say something like builder.register type. You would specify home controller, for example, and you also need to specify the lifetime. And in actual fact, there isn't so much flexibility here because there's only two lifetimes that you can choose from. The first lifetime is instance per request, and this, just as the name suggests, it's one instance being created per web request for this particular page. Now the other allowed type is instance per dependency, but that's really it. That's all that you can use, meaning you cannot just go ahead and reuse, for example, a controller for multiple requests. That's simply not allowed. So these are the only two options. So let's do instance per request here. Okay, so this is how you register the controllers. Now next up, you can already start actually building the container and using it. So here we can say var container equals builder.build. And after you've built it, what you need to do is you need to pass it on to ASP.NET MVC to actually start using this particular container for the actual resolution of the services. So the way this is done is using the dependency resolver. So we can take dependency resolver and we can say dependency resolver.setResolver, and here, luckily for us, Artifact provides its own dependency resolver, which is called Artifact dependency resolver, like so, and you need to pass in the actual container. So this is where you would pass in the container, and from now on, whenever ASP.NET MVC needs a controller, for example, it would go into the container and it would grab that. Now in addition, there are plenty of optional things you can add to the configuration. One of those is an ability to register model binders. So if you have model binders in your application, for example, here in my little app, I have a person class and I have a model binder for it. Now the only thing that you'll find which is different to the way that MVC does it is the top line here. So the top line requires you, and this is, by the way, an artifact attribute, model binder type attribute. This comes from artifact, and this specifies the type of object that you actually support, and you can have more than one of these. So for a given model binder, you can have more than one of these model binder attributes. Now coming back to our configuration, to enable injection for model binders, you would do two things. So first of all, you would say builder.register model binders, and once again, you would specify which assembly or sets of assemblies to scan for the model binders. So here I would simply do get type.assembly. But in addition, you also have to do a second thing, which means you have to register the binder provider. So here you would go ahead and you would say builder.register model binder provider. So these two things are necessary in order to be able to register the model binders. Another thing that you can do is to register web abstraction. So essentially the Artifact MVC support, the actual NuGet package comes with a module that adds the instance per request lifetime for different web abstraction classes, and this allows the injections of web abstractions as dependencies. So once again, you can use it via Artifact, and the way this is done is very simply. You say builder.register module and you say Artifact web types module, and that's pretty much it. And from now on, all those web abstractions are going to be registered with the instance per request lifetime. Another thing that you can add is property injection for view pages. Now, the idea is that you might have a class for a particular view page. So you might have an abstract class for my custom view page where you're using an interface called iLogger. And this interface can also be implemented by, for example, a text file logger or something to that effect. And you want to inject that so that subsequently your view, your Razor view in this case, can actually specify @inherits and start using that component. So here, if you want to, once again, start using property injection, here you would say builder.register source, and here you would specify a view registration source like that. And that's pretty much all that you need to do. And from now on, that injection will happen as well. And finally, I want to show property injection for action filters. So essentially, if you have some sort of action filter, like here I have my action filter, which actually implements logging. So it uses that iLogger service to log on actions being executed. And I want to inject this. I want to inject an iLogger with whatever it is that I have configured. Obviously, at some point up here, you would have to say something like builder.register type. You would register my text logger in this case as an iLogger, as before, iLogger like so. Now for this particular component, the lifetime doesn't matter, so we can leave it as instance per request. But here down below, what we can do is we can actually register the filter. So once again, this is very easy because you just say builder.register filter provider, and that's pretty much it. And you now have property injection in your action filters. So to sum up, it's very easy to actually customize ASP.NET MVC to inject the components into different locations in the overall execution process.